Last week, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, or BLS, released the new inflation numbers as of June, bringing annualized inflation up to 9.1%, which is the highest we've seen in the last 40 years, again breaking the previous inflation record of 8.5%. We're going to break down what this report actually shows and how the official inflation numbers can actually hide how bad the problem actually is for you. Hey everyone, I'm Bradford with the Penny Pincher's Guide to Personal Finance. Let's jump right into that BLS report. So to understand where the official inflation numbers come from, we need to talk about CPI, or the Consumer Price Index. This is the number that the actual inflation statistics come from. So what is it? So CPI, it reflects the spending patterns of two population groups: all urban consumers and then all urban wage earners and clerical workers. While this does represent 93% of the total US population, it does not include everybody, and I think this is one fault of the CPI and when the official inflation numbers are released, because it doesn't include 7% of the US population. And that 7% consists of people living in rural non-metropolitan areas, farming families, people in the armed forces, near and dear to my heart, those in institutions such as prisons and mental hospitals. So what do those numbers and what are they actually measuring to decide what the new inflation rates are, or if we've actually experienced some deflation? So scrolling down here on the report, and it gives a really good indication of what they're actually measuring from a month-to-month period to understand whether prices are going up or whether they're going down. So CPI bases their prices on food, clothing, shelter, fuels, transportation, doctors and dentist services, drugs, and other goods and services, which it does break down in the report, which we'll get to a little bit later. And this is things that people use on a day-to-day basis. So their sampling is actually pretty good. If you do live in an urban area, the numbers reflected by the CPI report, or the official inflation numbers, are actually probably pretty close to what you're actually experiencing in your day-to-day life. And if you're interested in understanding exactly how they go about measuring these things, it does do a really good job breaking that down further in the report, talking about where they actually go and what specific goods they are measuring within those broader categories. So now we're going to skip up to the top of the report and examine what exactly are the new news and what are the official statistics that are released after they assembled all the information from the month of June. Awesome. So now here we have the news release, Bureau of Labor Statistics, that was not allowed to be released until 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time on July 13th, 2022. So continuing down here, the Consumer Price Index for June 2022, I've already gone through, I've read the report. Feel free to read it. It does have a lot of really good information that you can use to make better buying decisions, but I'm going to highlight what are the key elements and what are the biggest takeaways from this report. So over the last 12 months, so measured from June 2021 to June 2022, the all items index, so all of the items that they're measuring, it averaged out a 9.1% inflation rate before seasonal adjustment. Now, the biggest impactors on this were gasoline, shelter, and food being the largest contributors, which just from a common sense standpoint, obviously, from last year to this year, depending on where I've been on my travels, gas has over doubled in price. Food is ridiculous, particularly when it comes to chicken, which is one of the mainstays of my diet. It's one of the biggest things that my wife and I use to cook. It has doubled or tripled in price, and depending on where we're shopping, it's just been absolutely ridiculous. And then shelter, if you're looking at buying a home, prices when it comes to actually getting a mortgage have gone much higher, which makes your monthly mortgage payment go through the roof, as well as landlords when they have to deal with the increased cost of property taxes and their own mortgages if they've recently purchased a price, that is forcing the prices of rents to go up as well. So continuing down here, and it talks about the index for all items, less food and energy, it only rose 0.7 for the month in June. So let's talk about what exactly is going on here. So the largest 12-month increase since the period ending in 1981. So we saw earlier in the year when we first hit that 8.5% inflation number, they're like, this is the highest rate in 40 years. Now, this is the highest rate in 41 years. So we're continuing to break records when it comes to inflation, which is bad for everybody involved. So if you hear something that's referred to as core inflation, that's what this is talking about right here. So if you take out the price of food and the price of energy, which consistently with historical data are the most volatile in terms of price increases, that is going to give you the core inflation, which is they're talking about, it's like, oh, core inflation isn't so bad. It only rose 5.9%. But when you hear those numbers, you need to understand that they're taking out the biggest factors, which are both food and energy. So what you're getting at the grocery store and what you're paying at the pump, which is impacting the majority of working class families the hardest. And then continuing down on this report, it shows you on a monthly basis how much inflation is growing from month to month. But then continuing down here on the report, it just shows you a couple other graphs different ways to look at how inflation is actually going. This red line is going to be core inflation, and this blue line is what we all really care about, which is going to be overall inflation. Then continuing down here, it's going to talk down and actually break down each of the categories on how much individual categories have gone up over the past year. So looking down here, so the all items, they average everything together, so that 9.1%. But when you start breaking things down, that's when you're really starting to see how bad things are exactly in specific categories. Like breaking down here, look, energy as a whole has gone up 41% from last year. But then when you look at gasoline, 60.6% increase. That's why you're getting some of these crazy valuations at the pump where you're paying $7, $8 a gallon if you're in California or New York or some of the other places that have the highest gasoline prices. Even on the low end across the nation, everybody's paying over $4 a gallon. Compare that to 2020 when there were a lot of states that were paying less than $2 a gallon. In all, this is a massive increase of inflation, and definitely the fastest increase of inflation that most of us have actually seen in our own lifetimes. And then as you continue looking down the list, you can just see how everything has gone up. You've got 19.4%, 38.4%, 5.9%. So this is that core inflation index. When you look in here, how much have new vehicles gone up? 11.4%. How much have used vehicles gone up? 7.1%. And some of the better things in terms of how much have things not gone up horribly as much. You have medical commodities, 3.2%, but still everything else, 5.6, 8.8, 4.8. Inflation on everything is going up. That's the biggest takeaway from this. Now, I will say the majority of this report, it's not going to help you at all change what your spending habits are on a daily basis or what's going to affect your budget. It is just taking everything together that you already know and have experienced with the prices of everything going up, and it's putting a number on it. Now, the one part of this report that I would suggest looking at after this video is looking at what is the actual breakdown per category when you're looking at the foods and the individual broader categories and seeing which ones have not gone up as much. Now, on a budgetary concern, if you're looking to shop for groceries, the only thing that this might impact is, hey, normally we bought a lot of beef, but now we want to buy a little bit more of X category and incorporate it into our diet because the price of that good has not gone up as much. So looking down here, particularly in the food section, so looking from June 2021 of last year to June 2022 of this year, we can see that, yeah, everything's gone up almost double digits. Really, the only thing that hasn't gone up double digits is going to be fruits and vegetables. Now, does that really help you out very much? No. Again, 7.7% for food away from home, so dining out prices haven't gone up quite as much. Now, is that going to help you on your budgetary side when dining out has always cost more than eating at home anyway? No, but maybe incorporate a little bit more fruit and veggies into your diet, and that might help you save a little bit when you go grocery shopping. Overall, the biggest takeaway from this report and knowing how to read it is yes, inflation is really, really bad. And probably the biggest weakness of this report is that it does only take into account people that live in urban areas. While it is the majority of the people in America based on how they define urban areas, the people that are not part of that category, their experience with inflation is going to be much worse. Now, if there's one positive in all of this with how much inflation sucks that I can pass on to you, is that no matter how bad the economy gets, the fundamentals of finance aren't changing. You still need to have a budget. You still need to be saving. You still need to be paying off your bad debts like your credit cards and any consumer debts that you have. You need to be investing on a month-to-month basis with dollar cost averaging. Now, if you're looking at specific strategies that you can use while we're going through inflation and the potential recession that we're already in, check out this video right here. I want to thank you for watching with me today, and until next time, please remember, we're here to help from your first penny to your first million.